Today, we're going to talk about one of the most important books ever written, The Records of the Grand Historian by Sima Qian. And trust me, this is way more than just a history book. It's really the story of how a foundational text for an entire civilization was born out of an incredible and incredibly tragic personal story. First, to really get a sense of this thing, you've got to picture what it was like back then. We're not talking about a paperback you can toss in your bag. When this was finished around 100 B.C.E., it was a massive physical object. So huge, you literally would have needed a cart just to haul it around. So what did that actually look like? Well, you'd have thousands of thin bamboo slips with characters carefully brushed onto them. These slips were then strung together with silk cords and rolled up, kind of like window shades. It was a whole world of knowledge, painstakingly captured on bamboo. And when it was all said and done, the final work came out to 130 of these rolls, or chapters. Just an absolutely staggering piece of work, designed to capture all of known history. So that brings us to our first section. We're going to take a look at what was actually in those 130 chapters and, why it was such a big deal. See, what Sima Qian created was something we call a universal history. He wasn't just writing down the events of one king or one dynasty. His goal was way bigger. He wanted to tell the story of the entire world as he knew it, all the way from its mythological beginnings right up to his own lifetime. It's that huge ambition that made the records a cornerstone of Chinese civilization. It really set the tone for its history, its literature, everything, for centuries to come. But here's the thing. To really understand this book, you absolutely have to understand the man who wrote it. And that leads us to the heart of this story, what I'm calling the scribe's terrible choice. The whole project started with a promise. On his deathbed, Sima Qian's father, who was the court's grand astrologer, made him swear an oath to finish the history that he himself had started. This wasn't just a casual request. It was a sacred duty, a matter of family honor. And Sima Qian took that duty incredibly seriously. For years, he worked on it. But then, in 99 B.C.E., his life just completely fell apart. He decided to speak up for a general who had surrendered to the enemy. Well, the emperor was furious. He charged Sima Qian with defaming the emperor, which was a death sentence. And this led him to an absolutely impossible choice in 98 B.C.E., a choice that would, paradoxically, allow him to finally complete his father's work. Okay, just think about this choice for a second. On the one hand, he could choose death. It was considered the honorable way out, but it would mean he'd fail his father. The great history would go unfinished. Or he could choose to live by accepting castration, the most profound, soul-crushing humiliation a man could suffer. He would be a social outcast, and his family line would probably end, but it would buy him the time he needed to finish the book. In the end, he chose to live in disgrace to fulfill his promise. And believe me, this was not a choice he ever made peace with. He wrote about the agony of it, this constant, gnawing shame that haunted him for the rest of his life. And that suffering is the absolute key to understanding the masterpiece he was about to create. And this is so important because his personal tragedy completely transformed his approach to writing history. He wasn't just going to write a list of events. He was about to invent a whole new way of looking at the past. So here's the crucial idea. Sima Qian's suffering taught him that truth is a really complicated thing. His goal wasn't to just stand on a mountain and proclaim the one official version of history. No, instead, he wanted to give the reader all the pieces, all the different perspectives, so that you could understand just how complex people and events really are. And to do this, he came up with this brilliant 5-part structure. You have the basic annals, which give you the official imperial timeline. Then you have the tables, which are kind of like the raw data, genealogies, chronologies, that kind of thing. The treatises are deep dives into big topics like the economy or music. The hereditary houses track all the powerful noble families. And then the real heart of the work, the ranked biographies, which tell the life stories of all sorts of fascinating people. So by setting it up this way, Sima Qian makes you, the reader, do the work of the historian. For instance, you might read about an emperor's glorious victory in the annals, but then you flip to the biography of the general who fought against him, and suddenly that same emperor looks cruel and deceptive. You have to put the puzzle together yourself to see the full, messy, human picture. And that complexity and deep empathy is exactly why the Records isn't just a history text. It's widely considered one of the greatest works of literature ever. The famous 20th century writer Lu Xun just nailed it. He called the records the historian's most perfect song. And by comparing it to the Li Sao, one of China's most famous epic poems about sorrow and injustice, he was saying that Sima Qian had poured all of his own pain, his own tragedy, into his history, turning it into something deeply emotional and powerful. He pulled this off by basically inventing techniques that we now associate with novels. He didn't just write down what people did. He dove deep into their psychology. What were their motivations? What were they feeling? He used sharp, dramatic dialogue that makes you feel like you're right there in the room. And he was a master of pacing, slowing things down for critical moments and speeding through the boring bits. I mean, the guy was just a master of prose. He would mix formal court language with everyday speech. He used all sorts of clever rhetorical tricks. And maybe most importantly, he created real character arcs. People in his history aren't just names on a page. They have flaws, they make choices, they rise and they fall. He literally transformed the raw data of the past into compelling human drama. So what's the end result of all this pain, this promise, and this incredible innovation? Well, nothing short of an immortal legacy that has shaped a culture for 2,000 years. First off, in the world of history writing itself, the five-part structure he invented just became the gold standard. For the next 2 millennia, pretty much every official history that was written followed his template. He didn't just write a history, he defined what history writing was. But his influence didn't stop there. By focusing so intensely on character, motivation, and drama, the records basically became the fountain from which Chinese fiction would spring. All the techniques he developed for telling true stories gave future writers the toolkit they needed to tell made-up ones. And so we come all the way back to the man and his terrible choice. Sima Qian made a bet. He wagered that by enduring the worst shame imaginable, he could fulfill his father's dying wish and create something that would outlive him, outlive his family, something that would last forever. He was right.